Our story begins in the small coastal town of Annieville, South Carolina, where a storm is slowly turning the peaceful town into a disaster zone. Dakota Edwards is inside her house trying to order some groceries, but the store informs her that they're closing early because of the worsening weather. When Dakota looks outside, she sees people packing their belongings and leaving town, which makes it obvious that something serious is coming. Despite her fear of going outside, she puts on a raincoat and forces herself to leave the house, but the chaos on the streets quickly becomes too much for her. Her anxiety overwhelms her, and she suffers a panic attack before a neighbor recognizes her and excitedly mentions that he hasn't seen her since her mother passed away. Dakota is unable to handle the conversation, so she quickly returns home and shuts herself away again. Not far away, 3 foster siblings named Dee, Ron, and Will are spending time near a lake. Ron jumps into the water while the others wait for him to resurface, and although he eventually pops back up, Dee is more worried about school starting again in a few days. Ron tries to cheer her up by pointing out that at least they'll have food every day, which is about as positive as things get for these kids. Their foster father, Billy Olson, soon arrives and angrily orders them home, immediately making all 3 children nervous. It is clear that they aren't exactly living in a warm and loving household, and Billy seems to enjoy reminding them who's in charge. Meanwhile, a pregnant veterinarian named Lisa Fields arrives in town with a meat delivery truck and meets the driver, Bob. Lisa is already dealing with plenty of stress because her fiancé abandoned her during the pregnancy, while her mother keeps encouraging her to have a water birth just like her sister did. Lisa refuses the idea and insists that she'll give birth in a hospital while listening to her carefully prepared playlist. Unfortunately, her plans begin falling apart when her mother tells her that the interstate has been closed because of the storm. Lisa has no idea how she's supposed to leave town now, and the weather is getting worse by the minute. At the same time, marine biologist Dr. Dale Edwards, who is also Dakota's uncle, watches the storm approaching from the horizon. Dale is particularly concerned because 6 bull sharks have recently been spotted in the water, and he realizes that the flooding could drive them into freshwater areas where people normally wouldn't expect to find them. Soon, the storm is upgraded to a Category 5 hurricane, forcing Dale to call Dakota and tell her to evacuate immediately. Dakota refuses because she believes the storm will pass, but Dale promises that he'll come to get her himself within a couple of hours. As the hurricane intensifies, Billy takes Dee, Ron, and Will back home and continues dismissing the danger around them. The kids worry that the windows might break during the storm, but Billy confidently tells them that they're extremely strong because he installed them himself. Downstairs, Billy meets his wife, Rachel, and complains about the children, while Rachel reminds him that they receive $1,500 every month from their uncle to care for them. Instead of using that money properly, the couple clearly treats the children like an inconvenience. When Dee comes downstairs because she's hungry, she notices steaks in the refrigerator, but Billy refuses to let her have any, and Rachel simply throws some bread at her before reminding her that the basement is off limits. While all of this is happening, Dale runs into a couple of reporters who are interested in the sharks. They exaggerate the situation for their report, but the actual danger is far worse than they realize. Lisa also reaches a store hoping to get supplies, only to discover that it has already closed. She calls her mother, but their conversation is interrupted when the connection suddenly drops. Lisa begins to panic and turns on her playlist to calm herself, completely unaware that the real nightmare is about to begin. Suddenly, the power goes out across the town, and the seawater crashes through the barrier protecting Annieville. Within moments, floodwater begins pouring into the streets, turning the entire town into a giant river. Lisa is desperately searching for a way out when she encounters Bob, who warns her that a massive tree has fallen across the road. He tells her to turn around, but before she can escape, the rushing water sends her vehicle sliding into the tree. Her car becomes trapped, and a large branch punches through the vehicle, leaving Lisa pinned inside while the water continues rising around her. Dakota hears the chaos outside and looks through her window just in time to see a massive wave approaching her house. She rushes inside, but the floodwater crashes through the windows and starts filling the building. At the same time, Bob's truck is swept away and smashes into a statue, causing blood to spill into the water. Unfortunately, the sharks notice the blood almost immediately, and what was already a terrible hurricane suddenly becomes a full-blown shark attack. 2 men named Scott and Jimmy are nearby on a boat when they hear Lisa screaming for help. Scott jumps into the water and eventually finds her trapped inside the car. He calls for Jimmy to bring a cutting tool from the back of their truck, and Jimmy manages to retrieve it, but when Scott turns around, he can't see him anymore. A few moments later, Jimmy resurfaces, but his hand has been severed. Scott tries to help him, but another shark attacks and drags him away before he can do anything. Dakota witnesses the attack from her window and screams that there are sharks in the water. Lisa hears her warning and begs Dakota for help, explaining that she's pregnant and running out of time. Dakota is terrified because leaving the house means entering the exact environment she's been desperately trying to avoid, but after looking at a photo of her mother, she decides that she can't leave Lisa to die. Dakota grabs a knife and carefully makes her way through the flooded house before climbing outside. She moves across floating debris and damaged structures while watching the sharks circling beneath her. Eventually, she reaches Lisa's vehicle and manages to cut away the branch trapping her. Dakota pulls Lisa free and brings her back into the house, giving the pregnant woman a temporary safe place to stay. Unfortunately, the danger is nowhere near over. Dale and his team notice another shark approaching their location, and this one is much larger than the bull sharks. It's Nellie, a pregnant great white shark that Dale has been tracking for the past 3 years. As the survivors struggle to stay alive, Nellie is moving through the same flooded waters, and nobody knows exactly what will happen when she encounters the bull sharks. Back at the house, Dakota and Lisa realize they need to get to the roof if they want to signal a rescue helicopter. Dakota climbs up and sends out a signal, but when she returns, Lisa suddenly begins experiencing severe cramps. Lisa asks Dakota to check how far along she is, and after reluctantly doing so, Dakota realizes that the baby's head is already beginning to emerge. There is no time left to reach a hospital, which means Lisa is going to have to give birth right there. Meanwhile, Dee, Ron, and Will are still trapped in their house as the water continues rising around them. Ron decides that they need something to defend themselves with, so they begin looking around the basement. They discover that Billy is dead after being dragged away by a shark, and instead of mourning him, the kids are more interested in finally getting access to the things he refused to let them touch. They also discover that the money their foster parents received for caring for them was far more than they realized, making it obvious that the couple had been taking advantage of them. Ron eventually finds weapons and even discovers a box of dynamite, giving the kids a crazy but potentially useful plan for dealing with the sharks. While they're preparing, Dakota ventures back into the flooded streets to find something that can create vibrations. She uses an electric toothbrush and a trimmer, seals them inside plastic bags, and plans to throw them into the water to attract the sharks away from her path. Night falls as the water continues rising, and Lisa realizes they can't stay where they are. Dakota heads back outside, using the vibrating bags as distractions while carefully swimming through the flooded streets. The sharks are everywhere, but she manages to reach the boat and climb aboard. Then Lisa goes into labor. With the house beginning to collapse around her, Lisa turns on her playlist and starts pushing. The situation is almost absurdly dangerous, but she has no other choice. The building finally gives way, throwing Lisa into the floodwater along with pieces of furniture and debris. Dakota races toward her while Lisa somehow manages to give birth in the middle of the flooded town. The baby is born, but the blood immediately attracts sharks. Lisa places her newborn on a floating piece of furniture, grabs a sharp piece of broken wood, and cuts the umbilical cord before preparing herself for the attack. A shark lunges toward her, but Lisa manages to stab it and drive it away. She reaches for her baby, only to realize that another shark is approaching from behind. Dakota spots it at the last second, grabs a crossbow, and takes the shot before the shark can reach Lisa. Meanwhile, the children put their own plan into action. They attach the dynamite to pieces of meat and throw them into the water, but the sharks don't seem interested. Ron remembers that vibrations can attract sharks, so the children begin splashing around in the water to lure them toward the explosives. The plan works, and the sharks start moving in their direction. Just as Dakota is trying to get Lisa and the baby onto the boat, a shark suddenly slams into it with full force, capsizing the vessel and throwing everyone into the water. Thankfully, Dale finally arrives with his team and uses an electronic device to generate a powerful current, forcing the sharks away from the survivors. But one bull shark still charges toward Lisa and the baby. Before it can reach them, Nellie appears. The enormous great white attacks the bull shark and drags it beneath the water, leaving everyone watching in complete disbelief. Nellie overpowers the smaller shark, giving the survivors the opening they desperately need. At the same time, the foster children successfully lure 3 bull sharks toward their explosive bait. The dynamite detonates, destroying the sharks and finally giving the children a reason to celebrate. Dale manages to pull Dakota, Lisa, and her newborn onto the boat, and the surviving children also escape the flooded house. Lisa calls her mother and proudly shows her the baby, while Dakota finally reunites with her uncle. As they leave the devastated town behind, Dale tells Dakota that her mother would have been incredibly proud of everything she did. The survivors may have escaped, but the movie refuses to give them a completely peaceful ending. As they travel away from Annieville, Dale's partner notices another hurricane forming over the ocean, suggesting that the nightmare might not be over yet. And that was Thrash, a 2026 disaster thriller that mixes a Category 5 hurricane with a town full of sharks. If you enjoy cheesy creature features where hurricanes, sharks, explosions, and unlikely heroes are thrown into one chaotic mess, Thrash is definitely worth watching for the entertainment value alone.